Hi, it's Michelle again. This is part 2 of trying to get over my stage fright by reading excerpts of some books that I'm currently reading. This is Real Life by Dr. Phil McGraw. The subtitle is Preparing for the 7 Most Challenging Days of Your Life. Chapter 1, Prep Talk. Oh, I forgot my reading glasses. Alright. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. Quote by John Lennon. If we are fortunate in our lives, somewhere along the way, we encounter at least a few special people who change us in powerful, positive, and sometimes unexpected ways. These individuals, although wise, are sometimes not at all the persons you would consciously seek out for counsel. One such person I was blessed to have in my life was a flight instructor I met back in the 60s. A man from whom I expected to learn how to get airborne and nothing more. I could not have been more wrong, because he proved to be one of the greatest gifts in my life. Bill was, by his own account and all appearances, just a good old flying cowboy without a lot of formal education who happened to love anything that had to do with flying. Bill is not his real name, by the way. He didn't use any real names. But his contributions to my life ultimately proved to include much more than flying, as this very book will attest. I was just a teenager when I started taking lessons. Ooh, lucky. But he saw into my future in that airplane. About that time, I was finishing my training, and he told me that I had checked all the boxes, done all the drills, met all the requirements, and could certainly go get my license and wing happily off into the wild blue yonder. He then paused and said something that really got my attention. I have never forgotten that moment standing next to the plane on the grassy landing strip outside a small town in North Texas. Phil, he said, you've got the basics. You know how to get her up and down and around the patch, and frankly, you ain't half bad. But I've come to know you, and I know, just as sure as I'm standing here, that you are going to need more than you've got. You won't play at this flying stuff. You will attack it and make it a big part of your life, rather than flying to Grandma's house on a nice clear Sunday afternoon. You're going to be out there mixing it up, come rain or come shine, daylight or dark, and that's okay. But the truth is, things just happen when you mix it up. Maybe it will be your fault for being too aggressive, or maybe you will just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But chances are that somewhere along the way, this plane will carry you into a crisis. When you are airborne, all you've got is yourself. You'd have to depend on who you are, and if you aren't prepared for it ahead of time, you can die in this airplane. So it's up to you. But know that it may come, and if it does, you will be one of two types of pilots. One who was ready and survives to tell the story, or one who wasn't and doesn't. He didn't wait for a response. He had spoken his piece, and that was that. Even then I realized the significance of the exchange, mostly because he had just spoken more words than I had ever heard him say at once in the entire time I had known him. Now you just have to understand here. Oh, sorry. I almost lost my place. Now you have to understand here that I was a teenager in the worst sense of the word. I suspect a lot of people who knew me then probably figured I'd eaten a lot of paste as a child. Boy, oh boy, did I have ants in my pants to sky up and go for it. Yet, for some reason, and certainly out of character for me, I actually listened to his wise counsel. We weren't even almost done because I wasn't even almost prepared for when things would go wrong. And though I didn't know it then, they would in fact go wrong. Way wrong. Fast forward 4 years, and several hundred hours of flying later, I took off in a high-performance single-engine airplane just before midnight. Some would call such behavior crazy, and on the heels of a strong winter storm that had blown through the Midwest like a freight train. Some would repeat themselves. The flight started like every other I had flown, but it had ended very differently. I was cruising at 10,000 feet when all of a sudden the engine just quit. And I mean quit. It didn't sputter, it just quit. The sky was pitch black, without even the tiniest sliver of a moon to illuminate it. And there were 2 feet of fresh snow blanketing the ground so that everything below me looked one-dimensional. I couldn't tell the difference between the houses, the fields, and roads, and there was no horizon to use as a guide. The silence was deafening. Snow actually muffles sound too. All right, making me feel utterly and totally alone. I couldn't pull over as if I had had car trouble. I couldn't grab a life preserver. I had just 5 minutes to work with, and that's 300 seconds. The clock was ticking. I was going down. No negotiation, no maybe. I was going down. Whether I lived or died would be determined by the grace of God and what I did in those 300 seconds. There was no time to panic or call someone on the ground. Looking back, I realized that I probably went into a kind of internal autopilot. All my training and preparation had kicked in. During those additional training exercises I had completed at Bill's behest, he must have had me simulate emergency dead stick landings dozens and dozens of times. Some during the day, some in the black of night, and in that cockpit, as I quickly came to grips with my situation, I heard his voice in my mind. Fly first, navigate second, and communicate last. The clock is ticking. I felt very alone, but I calmed myself with the fact that I had prepared completely for this exact situation. My emergency just meant that all those practice drills were for a purpose. It was now showtime. Let me tell you, that night I learned that there are just some things in life that come down to you and everything that's inside you. That's it. That's the deal. An old joke among pilots, which wasn't very funny that night, is that any landing you walk away from is a good one. I flew that airplane turned glider for those 300 seconds with more purpose and focus than anything I had ever done in my life. It was a good landing because I did walk away. I'd love to say I swaggered away like John Wayne in The High and Mighty, whistling and slapping the wing as I left. But the truth is, I was so shaken and scared, I was having trouble getting either one of my feet to cooperate in a way that even resembled walking. That 5 minutes of my life changed me forever. But it was all the preparation that led up to those 5 minutes that allowed me to make the right choices when it counted. If Bill hadn't cared enough to tell me the truth as he saw it, if he hadn't inspired and helped me to get ready for what was ahead, I have no doubt I would not be here now typing these words. I now know that the outcome on that cold, dark winter's night was determined long before I ever took off. I survived not because I was lucky or because I had some great macho pilot cheating death with a flair and panache. I survived because I was prepared. I survived because I had listened, because I had done my homework. I was prepared for the crisis before it happened. That night built into me a sense of confidence that if I prepared myself for the emergencies and crises that I would most likely face in life, I could at least influence their outcomes as well. I hope that you never find yourself in a crisis like I was that night. But we both know that while your crisis and will probably be different in both form and substance, they may already be on your schedule. The question is, will you be ready? Will you have done your homework for yourself and those that you love? Just like my night in the airplane, the outcome will probably be determined by what you do or don't do between now and then. So this is as good a time as any to start thinking about those days in life that we would rather skip. I want to say thank you for listening, and I'm very sorry about the sound quality. The hotel room here is kind of echoey, and I'm using my old phone because my iPhone broke. All right. Thank you. See you in the next video.